We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there. Patrick Christie's. I'm going to be covering for the big man every single day this week. And strap yourselves in, people, because we've got an absolutely massive show to kick-start your week. All the runners and riders of this Tory leadership election were potentially going live, maybe in about 10 minutes if he gets a move on, to Sir Graham Brady with a big announcement about the time frame of what we can expect from this leadership election. And a shocking and astonishing Conservative home poll is going to drop whilst we're on air about who the Tory members actually want to elect as their next leader, as our next Prime Minister. Apparently, they've all come out in favour of the Rwanda deal. What deal? I say it might as well just be foreign aid, because we've not sent anyone over there. We're going live to Holland, that's right, the Netherlands, because, well, we've got another protest, haven't we? It's like the Canadian truckers, but this time it's Dutch, and they're campaigning against net zero. We'll give you the very latest on that. Oh, and as well, a Talking Pints you're not going to want to miss. Of course, in light of the tragic news of what happened in Japan, said former Prime Minister, who was assassinated. We're going to be talking to a bodyguard to the stars about how you protect people in that situation. But first, it's your news, and it's with Polly.
Patrick, thank you. Good evening to you. And the top story tonight, Boris Johnson says he is determined to use his final few weeks to deliver the prime ministerial mandate he was elected on. Speaking in his first public appearance since resigning as Tory leader, he refused to endorse any of the 11 candidates running to replace him, saying throwing his weight behind any of them could damage their chances. Well, the former Health Secretary Sajid Javid warns the Conservative Party faces electoral oblivion if they don't change. Officially launching his campaign to become the next leader, he called for the Tory party to pull together and avoid poisonous gossip during the contest.
While families are limiting their weekly shop, politicians are getting caught up in arguments over who knew the latest sleaze allegations and when. And this isn't just bad for the country, it's catastrophic for the Conservatives. Because when we lose our integrity, we lose the trust of the British people.
Meanwhile, leadership hopeful Suella Braverman has outlined some of her key policies. The Attorney-General says she'll remove VAT from energy bills and fund the cuts by reducing the number of working-age people on benefits.
I think there are too many people in this country, for example, who are of working age, of good health, and who are choosing not to work full-time, and they are taking benefits. We still have a stubborn tail of the population that refuses to enter into economic activity. So I think we have to introduce much more rigour and incentive to get people into work.
Well, a timetable for the Tory leadership contest is expected to be drawn up once the new executive has been voted into the 1922 committee. That's the influential group of Conservative backbenchers who will then finalise the rules of the leadership contest. And it could include changes to limit the number of candidates who can run and the rules governing a no-confidence vote as well. Well, in news away from politics, GB News can reveal today that at least 800 people have crossed the English Channel in small boats in the 5 days since the authorities broke up an international people smuggling ring. Around 350 have been taken off 9 small boats attempting to make the crossing today. Last Wednesday, the UK's National Crime Agency announced that 39 people had been arrested as part of a multinational investigation. Here, train drivers at 8 rail companies have voted to strike in a dispute over pay. Members of the union ASLEF backed industrial action planned for this summer. The union's general secretary says strikes are the last resort, but they had been forced to act due to the rising cost of living. That's it from me. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News tonight, where Farage is presented by Patrick Christys.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, it's Farage, but with me, Patrick Christys. I am covering for the main man all week. Let's get stuck in, shall we? So, the runners and riders are in terms of the Tory leadership race. Now, I'm convinced that the Conservatives have committed a great national act of political suicide. I get that Boris was embroiled in sleaze. I get that his personal life was a bit of a mess. I get that there are scandals upon scandals. But in a weird way, there's something very honest about that. Because that's Boris, isn't it? That's who he is. That's the man that millions of people voted for. And despite securing a huge public mandate, it wasn't the public who booted him out, was it? No, it was politicians. But that's done now, and we have to move on. That's over. And what's a key issue going forward? OK, let's look at the future and not the past. Well, unfortunately, it's the same issue as always. The same issue that nobody has managed to get right. Immigration. Tony Blair had education, education, education. The next Tory leader has immigration, immigration, immigration. You can slap the word illegal in front of that as well. Now, according to reports, all the candidates have come out in favour of the Rwanda deal, with the possible exception of Jeremy Hunt. Important you get that name right. Well, to that, I would simply say, what Rwanda deal? We've basically just given Rwanda a load of foreign aid, haven't we? This is not an immigration deal. This is a foreign aid deal. There's been absolutely no result whatsoever. The cost of living crisis is massive. There's no doubt about that. And that'll be a big issue for people on the doorstep. But eventually, due to natural market and economic forces, that will sort itself out. What will not sort itself out is mass illegal immigration. Now, tomorrow, I'll be heading to a hotel to reveal yet another devastating case of the sheer toll that illegal immigration is having on this country. You do not want to miss what I'll reveal tomorrow, let me tell you that much. But it's one thing all the Tory candidates saying they support the idea of sending people to Rwanda. It's another thing actually doing it, isn't it? The British public, you, deserve results, not empty promises. Well, I'll tell you what we don't deserve. The desecration of our public services, a national housing crisis, a government who prioritises people who come here illegally over homeless military veterans. Mark my words, if the next leader doesn't get hold of immigration, doesn't actually enact the Rwanda deal or something a bit like it, they'll be dead before they even start. Well, there we go. I'm going to ask you now, my lovely audience. Thank you very much for tuning in, everybody. Like I said, I'll be filling in for Farage all week. I'm certainly looking forward to it. I'm going to ask you a question. I want to lob it over to you. We are the People's Channel, so get involved. Don't be shy. What's the most important issue for you at this particular leadership race? I've nailed my colours to the mast there. Don't think I'm wrong particularly. It'd be weird if I did. But I think immigration will be a massive, massive issue for most people, and who can actually sort it out. Like I've said, it's one thing, basically, trying to sort it out. It's nothing actually doing it. Well, get in touch by email. You can email Farage@GB News. And I've got a team beavering away here. You can almost hear them beavering away. Farage@GB News and basically .uk, by the way. And basically, you can tweet us as well. Use the hashtag Farage on GB News. They're going to be picking out the best ones, OK? And we'll go to that. And that question again, OK, in case you missed it, is literally, what's the most important issue for you at this Tory leadership election? So what is it that people could say or do, OK, that would really get your vote? That email, one more time, is farage@gbnews.uk. You can also tweet us using the hashtag Farage on GB News. Right, we've got loads coming your way, and so what we're going to do later on in the show is potentially go live to Sir Graham Brady, who's going to be giving you a breakdown of what's going to happen, the timeline, OK, the timeline, which is important. Also, we've been tipped off. We've got our sources here at GB News, I'm telling you. We've been tipped off that potentially there's going to be a massive Conservative home poll released. The results supposedly are astonishing about who actual Tory voters want to be their next leader. That's supposed to be dropping very, very shortly. But right now, I believe we can go to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who's right there on College Green for us right now. Darren, great to have you on the show. Thank you very much. Look, we're talking about the runners and the riders. What's the latest?
Yeah, we are indeed. Well, we're just waiting, as you've just been alluding to, for Sir Graham Brady. He was due here about 10 minutes ago, running a little late. He's currently at Conservative Party headquarters. They are, frankly, both of them, working out the timetable for these elections. If we just kind of pan around a little bit, you'll see that there's an awful lot of the waiting press here, waiting for Graham Brady to turn up, make a statement live on College Green, just outside Parliament, as I say, hopefully in the next couple of minutes. And he is going to set out that timetable, first of all, for the initial process, and that is with MPs. So they're going to decide who the final two are in a series of ballots, Patrick, over the next 10 days or so. They need to get down to the final two before Parliament goes into recess Thursday week. So what, that is about 10 days, isn't it? That process is going to start effectively tomorrow, when nominations officially open. We know there's lots of runners and riders, 11 so far, though Priti Patel could still throw her hat into the ring, making it a dozen. Then on Wednesday, we're expecting, again, we're going to hear this officially from Graham Brady very soon, expecting the first round of votes. We could see a second round on Thursday, and so on until we get to the middle of next week and they get down to the final two. Those two then essentially go to the membership of the Conservative Party. So there will be lots of campaigning, lots of hostings, lots of political debates involving the final two candidates before the membership of the Conservative Party, the 100,000 plus members, get to decide who effectively is going to be the new Conservative leader and thus our new Prime Minister. The other thing we're looking out for tonight from Sir Graham Brady is what the threshold might be in terms of getting into that first round of votes. Because at the moment there's only 8 MPs. Now, some of the candidates haven't got 8. It could go as high potentially as 20, maybe even higher than that. And in those circumstances, you have to conclude quite a few of them could already drop out. And then the big questions are asked about where do they and their supporters fall behind. And that's why this process, in some ways, Patrick, is so unpredictable.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Darren, thank you very much. We'll be lobbing it back over to you as and when Graham Brady, Sir Graham Brady, will eventually emerge. Don't take your eyes off this show, ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, because it's all about to kick off. Sir Graham Brady is expected to make a big announcement right there on College Green, which will be thrown to you inevitably throughout the show, I would imagine, if he does get a wiggle on. And he's going to outline exactly the rules for the runners and the riders. Very important stuff, this. How many nominations will they actually need? And also the time frame involved as well. Also, as well, like I said, blink and you miss it tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Blink and you miss it, because there's going to be a big poll dropping live whilst we're on air of Conservative voters who reveal, apparently, quotes, an astonishing result from Conservative home as to who they want as their next leader. But I opened up with what I'm going to talk about right now, which is, for me, the major issue. You can tart it up all you want, OK? You can talk about the cost of living crisis. You can talk about anything. You can talk about Ukraine. You can talk about all this kind of stuff, net zero. OK, fine. One of the biggest issues in this country has always been and will always be immigration, specifically illegal immigration, mass illegal immigration, and this Rwanda deal. Now, I've said it before, I don't think it's a deal. I think it's basically foreign aid, essentially, as far as I can tell, to not really send anyone over there. I mean, just today alone, as our wonderful Polly Middlehurst revealed, there were 800 people who crossed the channel, and the rest, ladies and gentlemen, and the rest. The number of migrants making the journey across the Channel in these small boats rose above 13,000 over the weekend, making control over the UK's borders a key leadership election issue. Former Chancellor Rishi Sunak, who'd been silent on the policy previously, conspicuously, finally confirmed his support for the scheme. We've got Jeremy Hunt apparently pledged to expand the scheme to other countries. There we go. So Hunt's rolling out the red carpet to other areas as well. 3 out of 4 Conservative voters support the scheme, which hasn't successfully deported a single migrant yet, after the first planned flight was, of course, grounded in June due to last-minute legal challenges. And I am joined now on this very issue by the man himself. It's immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson. Ivan, thank you very, very much for joining me. Right, OK, so immigration obviously is a key issue for this country. It always has been, it always will be. And I think that the Tory candidates who potentially pledges to get hold of it most will actually do it. Is there any chance of this Rwanda deal actually happening?
It's unlikely.
Right.
The High Court's going to look at it on the 19th of July, as you know, on whether the proposal itself, the policy, is lawful itself. Lots of lawyers have argued, and I'm being one of them, that it's not lawful.
So why is it not lawful?
Well, the main reason is you can't subcontract your obligations, international treaties.
But is that a moral argument and not a legal argument?
No, it's a legal argument. We're bound by the Refugee Convention. That means asylum refugees are entitled to claim asylum here. Now, the policy that the government proposes is that they're only going to carry out the initial asylum screening interview, which in my experience lasts about 30 minutes. And they're going to make an assessment of the whether it's a genuine claim or not.
Yeah.
If it's not, they get shipped off to Rwanda.
Yeah.
Rwanda then consider the asylum claim. Now, in 70 years that we've been assessing asylum claims, we get it wrong 50% of the time.
But isn't that made more difficult for us by people ditching documents in the Channel, not telling us where they're from, not telling us what their intentions are or any of this stuff? I mean, of course, it's like playing Where's Wally, isn't it? How on earth could you get it right 50% of the time if they're not telling you who they are or where they're from?
Well, I think the whole system is... the process is wrong here.
Well, how do you get that right? Sorry to interrupt, but how do you get that right? If people are going to ditch their documents in the Channel, people are going to come here illegally and not be upfront with us about who they are or where they're from, how on earth is that our system's fault?
Well, on the identity issue, there's other ways you can do that. There's
dental records is against their human rights, apparently.
No. Well, you can assess them from assessment teams, and the Home Office have been doing this for many years. So they ask a series of questions. So if you say you're from Syria, for example, there'll be a raft of questions they've got to answer, and if they don't answer them, and there's also accents and what they look like, and they get it. I mean, we can get it right most time, but what I propose is that the UNCHR needs to get involved. You see, the member states of the Refugee Convention don't take their fair share of asylum seekers. We certainly don't. We take about 26,000 a year, which has gone down since 1992. It's close to 100,000.
Well, yeah, but the problem is there. What's not gone down is hospital waiting times, the overburden on schools, our housing crisis. You know, it's all very well and good, wanting to throw your arms around the world, but where do we put them?
Look, if we're going to sign up to an international treaty, then we've got to abide by its rules. If we don't like it, let's come out. But you know what? The Suella Bravermans is suggesting that we come out the European Convention on Human Rights. Do you know in Europe, East and West, 2 countries that are not in the convention? Russia and Belarus.
OK.
So we'd be lining up with countries like Russia and Belarus.
Is that not forgive me, is that not a slightly lazy argument? Because, it's all very well and good saying, Russia and Belarus are the only country. It doesn't mean that we're trying to be Russia or Belarus, does it? We're just trying to do our own thing.
The convention was drafted by English lawyers, and it sets out fundamental human rights. And they're the principles that this country was built on. And for us to say, well, we can do it better, how? When all the other signatories of the Council of Europe say this is the standard. So I find it hard to believe how we can come up with something better.
Well, is it not a self-defeating argument? Because you're saying we drew it up. So we came up with it. So we came up with it. So by definition, we'd be all right to do it on our own again, wouldn't we?
Those principles are fundamental human rights.
Right.
The right to life. The right
to a fair... We're not killing people, are we?
Well, let me tell you about Rwanda.
Right.
So the country information report the Home Office has, it reports about the government torturing, killing, assassinating political opponents. And the report itself accepts it. So we're going to send people to a country which has got a track record of assassinating people. Now, the right to a fair trial, it doesn't exist in Rwanda. So have you read the policy?
I've read it, yeah, I have read it, yeah. But I'm, to be honest with you, I'm in favour of it. Right?
Yeah.
So.
But if you read the policy, if you really look into the policy, a lot of it says it's under Rwandan law.
Yeah.
Well, what is Rwandan law? They don't have a judicial system to deal with failed asylum seekers.
Okay.
So we can't just wash our hands and say, hear no evil, see no evil. It's a transaction is what we've done.
Right. Well, it's a deal. Well, supposedly it's a deal. I mean, it's not actually come to fruition yet, has it? I suppose. Just very lastly, how many asylum seekers are you going to take into your house?
Look, what's important is the policy lawful? It clearly is.
Yeah.
And the government are going to be found out. I have to say, you talk about Jeremy Hunt.
Yeah.
And he supports the Rwanda. I don't think he does.
No, there's mixed reports on that. Yeah.
I mean, my view is he says I support a plan.
Yeah.
The only candidate of all the potential candidates, he says there should be asylum centres. And if you have those centres, there's no need for people to come across the channel. And even if they do come across the channel, we just send them back to the centres. So if we have processing centres right around the globe, managed by the UNCHR, and have a fair distribution of asylum seekers, that's going to work. It's a global solution.
It's a global solution. There certainly needs to be one. I appreciate it. I enjoyed that bit of back and forth, I must say, Ivan. Thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. Of course, that was Ivan Sampson there, who is, of course, an immigration lawyer. How do you feel about it? Well, we're about to find out, because in our poll, we asked you, would you support someone who doesn't support the Rwanda deportation bill? That was our Twitter poll. And here we go. The results are in. You can see them on your screens there. If you're listening to us on radio, I'll just tell you, it's 15.4%, 15.4% said yes. 84.6% said no. So 84, let's round it up, 85% of you would not support a candidate who doesn't back the Rwanda deportation bill. I suspect, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth here, ladies and gentlemen, of course, but I suspect that what you really want is just a functional plan. What we've got at the minute is the Rwanda deportation bill. Of course, we've had Ivan on there who's kind of articulated that maybe there are certain other solutions, some kind of, asylum processing centres as well. I suspect that what that poll really tells us is that you just want a plan that works, right? But there we go. That's the result. 85% of you, ladies and gentlemen, said you would not support a candidate who doesn't support the Rwanda deal. Well, I tell you what, shall we find out what other results have just dropped live here on Farage with me, Patrick Christys? Do not ever blink, because you'll miss it on this show today. It's a massive, massive news day, this. Here we go. Conservative Home have just dropped the results of their polls of Conservative Party members about who they want. Who do you reckon, ladies and gents? Shall I tell you? I'll tell you. Penny Mordaunt has 20% of the vote, and Kemi Badenoch as well has 19%. They are now the clear favourites. Just to repeat, ladies and gentlemen, Penny Mordaunt and Kemi Badenoch are the two favourites. And Rishi Sunak is on 12%, Suella Braverman is on 10%, and Liz Truss is also on 10%. That's the result of a poll conducted specifically targeting Conservative voters. And, ladies and gentlemen, that's who elects our next Tory leader. That's who elects the next Prime Minister. So it's telling stuff, that, isn't it? It's going to be a gripping ride, basically. There we go. But, ladies and gentlemen, we've got loads coming your way. We will be keeping track of it. By the way, as well, we're going to have to throw at some point, hopefully, if he gets a wiggle on, to Sir Graham Brady, who's supposed to be announcing the details of exactly how this Tory leadership campaign is going to be run, time frames, exactly the number of MPs to support them that we're going to need to. It's going to be big, that. We're going to go live to College Green. But it's not the only story in town. No, of course not, because we're going to be talking as well about net zero. The Dutch have kicked off. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's like Canada, but this time it's orange. Because basically what a load of people are doing, the Dutch farmers are getting in their tractors and they're saying no to net zero. We're going to be going, fingers crossed anyway, to a guy whose name I'm going to struggle to pronounce. I believe it's Jeroen van Manen. So, I mean, we can all agree it's Dutch. And Andy Mayer as well, who's going to be in the studio, a friend of the show. The brilliant, the one, the only Andy Mayer of the IEA, to whiz you through all the ins and outs of net zero. What an absolute catastrophe it'll be. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Coming up on The Mark Steyn Show, as the race to find a Tory party leader heats up, former Brexit Minister Lord Frost joins for his first and exclusive interview since Boris Johnson's resignation. Eva Vladingerbroek will be asking why nothing is being done about the police who have been opening fire at Dutch farmers protesting environmental policy. Plus, after receiving an unannounced interrogation from West Mercia Police following her last appearance on The Mark Steyn Show, Telford grooming victim Samantha Smith is back to grill the bill. All that and more on The Mark Steyn Show tonight at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, Mark Steyn's going to follow me, and it's going to be box office as well, ladies and gentlemen. That ridiculous story. Your ears were not deceiving you there, by the way. Mark had a guest on who spoke out about grooming gangs, and instead of tackling the grooming gangs, the police knocked on her door and asked her to explain herself. This is Britain, ladies and gentlemen. But anyway, I asked you earlier, what issues matter to you the most in this Tory leadership race? And you've been getting in touch with me. John says, the most important thing for me is what our migration policy will be. Absolutely spot on, John. I called it earlier. It has been a mess for far too long. David's been on as well. How can you pick just one, he says? We're in a mess. Migration, cost of living, high tax. Well, a lot of them have come out, mixed reports about Jeremy Hunt, by the way, but a lot of them have come out and said that they basically back the Rwanda deal. What deal? As far as I can see, I've said it before, I'll say it again, it's just foreign aid, right? We haven't actually sent anyone to Rwanda. The cost of living crisis is a crisis. Most of them have come out to say as well they want to lower tax. It's one thing saying it, it's another thing doing it. But one viewer, who I believe is anonymous, says, taxation and migration, secure our borders and let us keep our money. Well, it says, You're living in a fantasy world there, viewer, but there we go. No, now, for me, obviously, Mike, this is Mike talking now. Mike says, for me, the most important issue is that the new Conservative Party leadership must address the woke takeover of our institutions. And I think, Mike, that's absolutely spot on. We really do have a lot on here. I mean, for goodness gracious me, I read a story yesterday that nearly made me choke on my coffee, actually, which was about children, young children, being taught things at school about how prostitution is basically OK. Now, this is not an anti-prostitute rant. It'd be weird if I went on one of those. But, talking about how, kinks and things like this, educating children about sexual, I don't know, I suppose, not deviances, but stuff like that, right? Why? Teach them maths, English, maybe a smattering of French and a bit of art, and leave it at that. But anyway, there we go. Alan's on. Alan says, the most important issue for the next PM to grapple with is how to deliver on all the promises given to the Brexiteers after voting for Brexit. Well, there we go. That's your views. Keep them coming in, people. OK, make sure you get in touch. Farage at gbnews.uk. Yes, it's with me, Patrick Christie's, but still email that address. Anyway, huge protest now have swept the Netherlands as Dutch farmers resist new net zero laws that would limit livestock and fertiliser use in a bid to cut carbon emissions, right? So it's going to financially ruin them, basically. Thousands of farmers have used their tractors to block supermarkets, roads and airports in demonstrations across the country, some of which have turned violent. The protesters say that new laws would threaten their livelihoods and global food production, forcing many farms to downsize or go out of business. Supermarket shelves remain sparse as the Dutch farmers clutch protest signs emblazoned with the message, no farmers, no food. And if you're listening on radio right now, we've just shown a footage of that. Basically, it's a motorway in Holland, essentially, with a load of people in tractors protesting. And joining me right now is someone who's been part of these protests, and it's dairy farmer Jeroen van Manen, whose name I apologise, I've probably just butchered, I'm afraid, but there we are, of the Dutch Dairy Farmers Association, joining me now from Zeewolde in the Netherlands, and he's been protesting against the policy. Look, thank you very, very much for joining me, and apologies about your name, right? But talk to me about what's going on, all right? What's happening with you? Why are you so livid?
Well, Dutch government made some plans last years, actually. The protests have been going in Holland for already 2.5 years. And 1 month ago, they made some plans. They divided Holland in a few different regions. And it's all about cutting our nitrogen emissions back. But some of the regions, they want to have to cut it back 12%, 46%, 75% or 95%. And techniques or innovations are not allowed, so the only way to do it is to cut back the number of your herd, and actually it will cut back the percentage of your income also. So lots of farmers in Holland fear for the future.
But what I don't understand, and what a lot of people we're going to bring in very shortly, by the way, just sitting next to me now, is our kind of resident net zero expert, Andy Mayer from the Institute of Economic Affairs, who's all over this. So we'll get his view on a more international perspective on this very, very shortly. But in terms of what's going on in the Netherlands right now, does it feel like your government is willing to essentially sacrifice you and your livelihood, the beating heart of the nation, the people who keep the nation fed and watered, in this ridiculous pursuit of some kind of big green agenda that probably no one's ever voted on?
Yes, that's true. It's very much true. You know, they want to get rid of farms to make some nature land and also build houses. Houses which we don't need for Dutch people, because a normal Dutch couple would get 1.8 or 1.9 children. But they're building them for the refugees, you know. 100,000 people are immigrating to Holland every year. So it makes up for about 1 million in 10 years' time. And that's what I want to do, build 1 million houses.
Well, we're having something similar over here, and as well, tomorrow I'm actually going off to a refugee hotel, or I suppose an illegal immigrant hotel, one may say. And it's really interesting, actually, to hear that what's happening over where you are, because you paint a very similar picture to the concerns that a lot of people over here have. And it is really that thing of, we have a lot of things in common. Just because Britain voted to leave the European Union, we didn't vote to leave Europe. You are still our brothers and sisters, right? And we share some very, very common issues, right? There's the migrant crisis, there's the net zero crisis, and the fact that sometimes we're being led by donkeys. But just quickly, how are you going to progress with this protest? So what's the end game here? Are you just going to try and bring the country to its knees to make a point?
Yeah, probably. There is no end. Farmers will fight for their future and for their families and for the farms, and also for food on the table for the citizens. So there is no end.
Right, and just on some, just very quickly, sorry about this, but I just want to get you on this. We've been told a bit about some of these protests turning violent. Is that true, or is that just media guff?
Yeah, most of it is media. 99% of the protests are still pretty friendly, you know. So the rest of it is media and trying to make the support from the people less. Okay. But it's not working. The support from people is massive.
Well, look, you know, we've got a group of people here who basically are saying enough is enough, ladies and gentlemen. And these people, how can you possibly disagree with someone who goes, our government is about to take food out of my children's mouths, take my livelihood away, and I'm going to get in my tractor and I'm going to do something about it. I say all power to you. Jeroen van Manen there. I'll talk to you again very soon, my good man. Thank you very much. Right, now, without any further dither and delay, we've got Andy Mayer here. He's a friend of the channel. He's brilliant. He's the one and only. And he's been basically our kind of resident net zero expert. You've cut through the noise, Andy. Just talk to me a bit about the bigger picture here, then. So the Dutch have kicked off, but this is a global issue, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a global issue that's going to hit Europe first and foremost. And it's so much worse than the way it was just portrayed. I mean, when I was reading up on this stuff, I was thinking, no, it's got to be an exaggeration. No, government's clearly trying to put out half their farmers out of business. But that's exactly what the Dutch government is trying to do. They have gone completely mad. There is an environmental issue here, just to be clear, why they're doing this, which is all about nitrogen, NOx emissions. It's not quite the same thing as net zero, but it's all linked to the same sort of environmental strategy. And what they want to do is get those emissions down. But the way they're going about it is they've simply taken a UN direction that they've then been translated into an EU law that has then been translated into a set of yearly emissions that hit Holland most because they export the most from agriculture.
Right. Do you think that the people in charge really believe in this environmental cause? Because, or do you think they're just doing it? Because it's really weird where I'm sitting. Really weird that clearly they're happy to put a lot of their own citizens out of business, cost a lot of people a lot of money, massively inconvenience people for the pursuit of the... Do they really think the world's going to end?
It's not that they think the world's going to end, but they think it matters. And they've got this equivalent to net zero trap where they're so obsessed with the target, they're making terrible decisions. Because the environmental impact from some of these things is uncertain. There's been a big Royal Society report on this in the UK, where they estimated the impact of the similar emissions was about £700 million a year. Now, the Dutch agriculture industry is one of the biggest in the world. It's exporting about 100 billion every year. And that's a trade-off. And they're going to destroy all of that. And it won't actually make much difference to global emissions of nitrogen,
isn't it?
Because they'll just offshore it. Other people elsewhere will be producing the cattle that have been killed in Holland to satisfy this net zero goal.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? It's one of those things that is, weirdly, the net zero stuff is what arguably a lot of vegans are behind as well, and now we've got cattle being slaughtered. But just lastly, Andy, I mean, this is going to kick off, I would have thought, throughout the world, frankly. But do you think there's a lack of faith in humanity here? The idea that we are not capable of coming up, without maybe necessarily making too many changes, right? We're not capable of coming up with a solution to this environmental crisis ourselves. We've got to make loads of changes now. Do you not think that human beings are going to sort this out? We're going to come up with something?
Well, the Dutch know that they can because the Dutch farmers reduced their emissions by about 60% over the last few years. And their reward for that is for the government to turn around and say, not good enough, despite there being very little evidence that it's only the agricultural sector that's causing the problem. They're just taking the brunt of it because they think they can. It's 2% of the population. They think they're a soft target. Well, they've clearly proven they're not a soft target. And you can expect those protests to start spreading into other countries that are facing similar emission limits, unless their governments wise up and take, as you say, a more pragmatic approach and believe in people to invent the solutions.
Andy, you're an absolute legend. Thank you very much, my good man. Andy May, there, of course, of the IEA. When Andy talks about net zero and about the environment, you better listen because he's always right. Andy May, thank you very, very much. Right, OK, so now, my first What the Farage moment comes from the one and only Nadine Dorries. That's right, one of Boris's biggest loyalists, actually a superfan, some would say. And she's been speaking to my colleague and indeed friend, Dan Wootton, in an exclusive GB News interview. Now, she made a little dig at Rishi Sunak. I tell you what, she didn't hold back. Here it is.
You were obviously sitting around the cabinet table with those two men. Did you have any idea that they were plotting against the Prime Minister?
I have my suspicions, not least because when some difficult decisions were taken, like when we wanted to lift restrictions from COVID, it was very difficult to get the Chancellor at meetings to commit to any policy at all. Rishi had been planning his campaign to the letter, launched it the day it was ready, and everybody else is kind of like blindsided and thinking, what's going on? We've all been working so hard. How can he have been that campaign ready? Well, the answer is he wasn't working so hard. We all were. And I'm afraid we found ourselves in quite a difficult position.
It's strong stuff. I tell you what, Dan Wootton has really pulled one out of the bag there, hasn't he? And you can watch that full interview on Dan Wootton tonight, right here on GB News, and it's following up as well a bit later on. It's going to be, well, about 9 p.m, really, I suppose. He might be leading in on it, I'm not quite sure, but he starts at 9 p.m, so you better tune in, just in case. But just reacting to that, ladies and gentlemen, how do you feel about Rishi? It went from dishy Rishi, didn't it, to be honest with you, maybe a little bit of a snake. Where did all this Partygate stuff come from? Where did it all come from? Now it's emerged, of course, that he's been campaign ready, as Nadine Dorries said, for rather a long time. A very slick promotional video, arguably, some would say, recorded quite far in advance. Now, this guy, OK, has got a pretty shaky record. Got to be careful what I say here now. A questionable record when it comes to, well, I suppose, paying full tax in the UK. Certainly his wife, OK, we all know the stories, right? There's no insinuation, of course, that Rishi Sunak's done anything illegal. But bit of a shaky record. A lot of people say, hey, maybe he's a bit out of touch. Maybe he's too rich. For me, it's very simple. He's too short to be our leader. You can't have a leader that small. You can't. I'm sorry. He's teeny tiny. It's teeny tiny Rishi. And I'm sorry, it's not an ad hominem attack here, but you cannot have someone that Emmanuel Macron looks down on, right, as your leader. It's about stature on the world stage, and Rishi Sunak looks like a toddler. Right, my next What the Farage moment is from the Church of England. That's right. And they've said that there is no official definition of a woman, which is interesting, isn't it? Because I think in the Bible it talks about Adam and Eve, doesn't it? But there we go. In a written reply to a question submitted by General Synod, a senior bishop said that although the meaning of the word woman was previously thought to be self-evident, because it is, additional care was now needed. Well, the Reverend Angela Berners-Wilson, England's first woman priest, said that she is not totally happy with the answer, but added that the issue is, of course, sensitive. I mean, is it? A woman is a woman. Why is it so difficult for people to say? I tell you what, talking about the Tory leadership race as well, this has been an issue that potentially could have come back to bite Penny Mordaunt. If you're just joining us, by the way, a couple of things quickly, OK? Sir Graham Brady, leader of the 22 committee, is supposed to be making, although he's been supposed to be making it for the last half an hour, and we get to see him, but supposed to be making a statement from College Green about essentially the runners and riders and the formalities of this Conservative leadership election. We are going to be, fingers crossed, lobbing over to that at some point soon. But also, as well, little bit of breaking for us as well. We were live on air when this happened, which is the Conservative Home poll dropped, which is Conservative Party members saying who they wanted. And Penny Mordaunt was the favourite, OK, on 20%. And Kemi Badenoch was the second favourite on 19%. Rishi Sunak, who we've just been speaking about, was third on 12%. So two clear frontrunners there. But it's on that issue as well, isn't it, about what is a woman? Now, Penny Mordaunt, actually, for a little while, got into a bit of a sticky wicket about all of this because she previously basically said that trans women are women. Now, OK, fair enough. That's not my view, of course. Maybe it's yours at home. I don't know. Let me know. I mean, my view is pretty straightforward, right, on this, which is if you're born a woman, you're a woman. If you're born a man, you can't just call yourself a woman. Women did not throw themselves in front of horses as part of the suffragette movement so that a man with a penis could turn up and say that he was a woman, right? So that's my view on that. But Penny Mordaunt actually came out and explained her decision on that. Now, she said, yes, I did say that trans women are women, but she also said she's got a great track record of empowering women's rights. And she rattled off a fair few things that she's done in the past. And actually, I think she's kind of explained her way out of it. But let us know what you think. That poll, again, that just dropped while we were live right here on GB News, was that Penny Mordaunt is the frontrunner as it currently stands on 20% of the vote. Kemi Badenoch coming up strong on 19%. Dishy Rishi, yeah, third on 12%. And I just wonder whether or not he's a bit too slick, whether or not he's a bit too rich, and whether or not he's a bit too short. Here we go, people. Graham Brady, right now, here he is, leader of the 22 committee, outlining what's going to go on in the Tory leadership race. Take it.
And close tomorrow. We'll have a first ballot on Wednesday, and a second ballot is likely on Thursday. We expect 20 supporters for each candidate, a proposer and a seconder who will be public, and 18 others. We'll also expect that on the first ballot, any candidate to proceed must have won at least 30 votes from parliamentary colleagues. Any questions?
Yes, some will say that you're discriminating against the lesser-known candidates.
What we try to do is find a balance where we're making sure the parliamentary stages are concluded reasonably rapidly before the summer recess, but we do believe we can have that proper discussion within the party. Obviously, we know our parliamentary candidates already. We do need to make sure there's a decent period of time before the result is announced on the 5th of September. we need to make sure there's a reasonable amount of time for the party membership in the country to have a chance to meet and question the candidates at regional hustings.
And so just to be clear, 5th of September is the deadline for...
Sorry, Sir Graham, sorry, if I can ask, just to be clear, when do you want to get down to the final two? What's the date for that?
Well, we'll get down to the final two as quickly as that happens. We will have successive ballots until that happens. I would hope that we will do it relatively quickly. We will have the first two ballots this week and then begin ballots next week, probably on Monday, and it may be that we reach the final two at that point.
On Monday?
What about the timetable, Sir Graham, for the vote of party members? You've been a long time talking to the board just now. Is there some dispute? Do they want a longer contest? When do you want the vote of party members to be completed?
Well, I think the result should be announced on the 5th of September, which will be when the House returns from the summer recess. I think that's a perfectly reasonable timetable. What the party board and the volunteers on the party board were very keen to ensure is that there were going to be sufficient opportunities for hustings meetings around the country, and we've reached a satisfactory agreement on that. I think the agreement was about a dozen, but that may include some digital online meetings.
Sir Graham, can I jump back in? Okay.
Lively and open, thriving field?
It seems to be quite a big field at the moment, a lively contest. I hope we will have a very constructive contest, but a really good opportunity for a proper, healthy, constructive debate about the future direction of the Conservative Party.
Sir Graham, can you just reflect on what's gone on, because you've set quite a high threshold here, but this is a terrible distraction for the country, for the party, for the government, at a time when the economy is in difficulty. People are facing a cost of living crisis. Number one, you want to get this over quickly. And number two, you are surely worried about your party's reputation in this absolute mess.
I'm very keen that we get this concluded as smoothly, cleanly and rapidly as possible. And certainly we should have a conclusion and a new leader of the party elected and announced on the 5th of September.
Are you worried about the party's reputation, sir?
I think this is a great opportunity for us to have a really good, constructive debate about the future of the party. I think it'll be a healthy thing to do, and we will have that result in a few weeks' time.
Sir Graham, as representative of Backbench, as chairman of the 1922, are you comfortable that Boris Johnson will remain as caretaker till September the 5th?
Well, this is a simple constitutional principle in this country. A Prime Minister remains Prime Minister until there is a successor. So that's not my responsibility. We are dealing with our responsibilities as quickly as we reasonably can. Thank you very much.
Graham, just one more thing. Were you surprised when the Prime Minister, when you went to see him on Wednesday, that he didn't resign at that point, when you told him he didn't have the support of the party? Were you surprised?
I think much will be written on this subject, and we'll have lengthy discussions and debates about it into the future. The crucial thing is that we've arrived at the point we're at, and we now have a very clear plan to take things forward and resolve the leadership question.
So Graham, just a final question. Was there any mention in the meeting that anybody that goes forward into this contest will have to guarantee that they will go to the postal ballot at the moment?
Yes, we're very keen on that. So I will be seeking assurances when we get towards that later point. Thank you very much.
Right, OK, well, off he pops. That was Sir Graham Brady there, of course, the leader of the Backbench 1922 Committee of the Conservative Party, who's basically decided to outline what's going to happen, the formalities of what is going to be a gripping Conservative leadership race. And here to pick the bones out of it is our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who just watched it live. Darren, I believe you are there now. Right, OK, so give us the bullet points, mate. What happened?
So essentially, I mean, the top line is that we're going to find out, absolutely confirmed there by Sir Graham Brady, that we are going to know who the new Conservative leader and Prime Minister of this country is on the 5th of September, when Parliament resumes after the summer recess. We also learned that the ballots for who wants to stand in that election to be the new Conservative leader opens and closes tomorrow. So that means that any other candidate who wants to simply get their name down i.e. Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, who seems to be the last major one who would do so, need to do that by tomorrow. Then we're expecting the first ballot on Wednesday. The threshold to get involved in that is going to be set at 20, which is quite high, given the fact that only Rishi Sunak and, to date, Penny Mordaunt have crossed that threshold, though a lot of the Conservative Party, a lot of their MPs haven't publicly declared who they would back. And then, interestingly, to get into the next round, into the second round, you need to secure at least 30 MPs. So this is the interesting thing, isn't it? They're obviously trying to whittle down the number of MPs who get through each round and make it more and more difficult to do so. When asked when that process would end, he said he wanted to do it as soon as possible, but that in the end that could go into next week. They want to get this sorted though before Parliament goes into recess at the end of next week. But the 5th of September we will have a new Conservative leader, Patrick, and a new Prime Minister.
Goodness gracious me, it's kicked right off. Darren McCaffrey, thank you very, very much. Darren McCaffrey there, of course, our political editor, who just watched. If you're just joining us, OK, I'll fill you in very briefly. Basically, Sir Graham Brady, the leader of the backbench 1922 Tory committee, has essentially outlined the facts when it comes to how this leadership contest is going to work. The 5th of September is that date when we will have, ladies and gentlemen, a new Tory leader and a new Prime Minister. I've been asking you throughout the show, what would it take for you to vote for someone? What are the big issues for you? Surprise, surprise. It's immigration, immigration, immigration so far. But do get in touch. Farage at gbnews.uk. I am, of course, covering for the big guy, and I will be all week. But Talking Pints comes up very, very shortly with Simon Newton, who's a former bodyguard to the stars, and he's an actor as well. The reason why, OK, is, of course, we saw the very tragic assassination of the former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Now, I kind of wanted to just ask, really, how do you protect someone? What is close protection all about? Basically, how do you stop someone getting assassinated? All of that comes your way very shortly. Don't you dare move. We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there. Yes, hello everybody. Your eyes are not deceiving you. Nigel Farage is actually away. It's me, Patrick Christie's, filling in for him. I must say I'm having an absolute whale of a time, so thank you everybody who's been tuning in. Well, joining me tonight on Talking Pints is former bodyguard to the stars, now a business owner, an actor. There's nothing this man can't do. It's Simon Newton. Well, cheers.
Cheers, mate.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much for coming in. Also, full disclosure, I must say, sorry to shatter the illusion, everybody. This is actually apple juice, all right? OK, so That gets me out of trouble. Right, so how are you?
I'm well, you?
Yeah, very well. Thank you, mate, for coming in. I know it's going to be a bit short and sweet. You can blame Sir Graham Brady for that. You can probably take him out, to be fair, if you want to. But,
I'll have a word.
So talk to me a bit about you first. So you're a former bodyguard to the Stars. Just what was that all about?
That was a hectic 17 years. Started off with the military, and then I kind of, while I was in the military, I kind of got offered a job in the private security world, working in the Middle East. So straight away, that was my transition into becoming a bodyguard, which I kind of hadn't planned that early on. I was only about 24 at the time.
Oh, wow.
So I was very young, I got a job working in Iraq quite early on. So, I did that for quite a number of years. I left there, went to Afghanistan for a number of years, working for a Commonwealth Office as a coast protection officer. I went on to ship security, oil tankers, LPG tankers out in the Gulf of Aden for anti-piracy.
Gosh, you don't mess about, do you?
No, lots of tick all the boxes. And then I come back into London, where I started with Middle Eastern royal family, and everything sort of took off from there, from London. It's gone from there, really, to what it is today.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to move on in a little bit, because obviously Shizo Abe got assassinated as a former PM. So I want to talk to you about that. But I think look, people like me, right, who are just civvies, I suppose, are absolutely fascinated by people like you.
Right.
You must have had some incredibly hairy moments.
Yeah, of course, certainly working away. In the UK, we're quite lucky. It can be risky at times, but not so much in the UK. Middle East, obviously, working in, war-torn countries, if you like, it was rough some days.
Right.
But not all the time. You're not living that day every day. So, of course, some rough moments.
And you were, is it right, am I right to say you were bodyguard to Michael Jackson?
I was, 2006.
What was that like?
Hectic. It was good fun. I didn't fully appreciate the job. I was 26 years old.
Right.
And it was another job for me at the time, and I took it on, and it's just...
Was he as weird as he looked?
He was quiet. He's
Quiet?
very subdued, quiet man, yeah.
I'm not being funny, but did you have to step in at time? Was it more mad fans, or was it like actual threats to life?
No, it wasn't threats to life, but the fans were super mad for some of them. But there's 5 of us on that job. You wouldn't be able to look after someone like that on your own, really. It's a big job, 3 or 4 vehicles. Difficult to move them around, but it's a good job for me at that age again. It was a good job.
Absolutely. Now, I just want to move on because sorry, we got squeezed by Sir Graham Brady, right? But classic. But look, in terms of what went on in Japan, I mean, you can look at it from a professional element of it. So basically, a guy came up behind the former Prime Minister and shot him twice.
Yeah.
I mean, that shouldn't have been allowed to happen, obviously.
It shouldn't have been allowed to happen, but there's a lot of circumstances. From what I've only got the footage, what everyone's seen to go by. Obviously, I don't know anything other than that. So, first of all, it's very different to comment correctly on that because you only can go what the rest of the world can see. To my knowledge, it's a handmade.
Yeah, it was.
Handmade firearm. There was no sort of intelligence before that. The guy was a lone wolf, if you want to call him that.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to combat that. You can't treat everybody as hostile.
Right.
There was no indicators at all that was going to happen. And just because you've got a 12-man or 20-man or 30-man security team doesn't mean say you're invincible. That 1% of, if they closed the security net to sort of a good 3%, to keep it tight, some days, unfortunately, that 3% gets touched.
Yeah.
And that's what happened that day, really.
Just very, very quickly, I'm going to shout it out here, but I want one more. Do you have to constantly be on alert, and does that have an impact on you? Because can you switch off or not?
Outside of work?
Well, when you're at work, you must have to be on it all the time. And does that have a knock-on effect?
You get used to it.
Right.
When you're out, if you're in the container, so you're in a hotel, if the person you're looking after is away, it's fine, forget about it. But as soon as you step out of that hotel to wherever you're going to you're back in that hotel that day, it's constantly on it all the time. And if you leave it a second, it can go wrong.
Well, I'll tell you what, rather you than me, mate. Look, thank you very much. Cheers. I'm sorry it was short and sweet, like I said, but you picked a bad news day to come on, unfortunately, or a very good news day, depending on which way you're looking at it. Cheers, mate.
You're welcome.
Let's chat again soon, mate. Yeah, I'm fascinated by you. That was Simon Newton, of course. And frankly, there was loads more to get stuck into there, but former bodyguard to the Stars, now a business owner and an actor as well. And I tell you what, he seems like quite a nice chap to boot. Right, well, look, coming up next, where's this show gone? Coming up next, Mark Stein joins us. Mark, I'm sorry to throw to you late, my man. We've been overtaken by events. How are you? What's coming up?
No. A great show, Patrick. Lord Frost is going to be in studio with us, and we also police don't investigate murder, they don't investigate robbery, they don't investigate rape. What do they investigate? They investigate you if you go on GB News. That's coming up.
Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Very warm out there this evening, a difficult night for sleeping ahead as things stay pretty sticky and humid. Tomorrow, another fine day of hazy sunshine in the south, but things are changing further north. There's a weather front on the way, and it's a cold front which will slowly be introducing slightly cooler conditions, but not for the time being. High pressure is still dominating a very warm evening and a very warm night to come. But here comes that weather front, bringing cloud and some rain to parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, particularly through the early hours. It will eventually bring some cooler conditions into the extreme northwest, but for most of us, we're looking at temperatures mid to high teens in parts of eastern England. May not drop below 20 Celsius, so a very warm start to Tuesday. Hot, hazy sunshine again for the southern half of the UK, but a different day for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Thicker cloud through the central belt, Northern Ireland could bring some patchy rain at times, although that will tend to fizzle out. Brighter skies will follow across the far north, some sunny spells developing here. With more cloud for England and Wales, perhaps not quite as high the temperatures, but still over 30 Celsius across the southeast. As we go through the evening, a bit more thick cloud just spilling into the Midlands and South Wales might produce the odd spot of rain, but for most it stays dry. Some showers will continue to feed in across northern Scotland. And then into Wednesday, well, for most, it's another dry and sunny day. But this line of cloud across the south at first, that is that weather front that's moved through. So temperatures won't be as high on Wednesday. And we'll continue with some showers and a brisk wind across northern Scotland. Mid-teens here, low 20s for most, but still in the south we could get 27 or 28. Not as hot as today and tomorrow, so temperatures is ticking down a little bit midweek. However, early days, but on Sunday we are concerned that temperatures could become extreme. So the Met Office have today issued an extreme heat warning for Sunday for parts of England and Wales.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.